The Enchanted Bookstore. In a quiet, little town, there was a mysterious bookstore at the end of Maple Street. Its name, Whispers of Wonder, was written in golden letters on an old wooden sign. The shop was owned by Mrs. Ivy, an elderly woman with sparkling green eyes and a smile that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. No one really visited the bookstore anymore, except for one curious boy named Oliver. He loved books more than anything in the world. While other kids played video games or watched TV, Oliver would spend hours lost in stories about knights, dragons, and distant lands. One stormy evening, Oliver was walking home from school when he passed the bookstore. The wind howled and the rain soaked his coat, but something made him stop. The shop's door, which was usually shut tight, was slightly open. Strange, Oliver thought. He peeked inside. The air smelled of old paper and cinnamon, and golden dust floated in the dim light. Shelves stretched endlessly, filled with books of every size and color. "Hello?" Oliver called out, stepping inside. Mrs. Ivy appeared from behind a shelf, holding a small book with a red leather cover. "Ah, Oliver," she said, as if she'd been expecting him. "You're just in time." "In time for what?" he asked, confused. Mrs. Ivy handed him the red book. "This is no ordinary book. It chooses its reader. And it has chosen you." Oliver hesitated. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "Open it, and you'll see." Oliver opened the book, and the pages began to glow. Suddenly, the words lifted off the paper and swirled around him like tiny fireflies. Before he could blink, he was no longer in the bookstore. He was standing in a magical forest, where trees sparkled like diamonds, and the air hummed with music. A golden path stretched ahead of him, and on the path stood a talking fox with a tiny top hat. "Welcome, young reader," the fox said with a bow. "You've entered the world of the enchanted book. Only the bravest can unlock its secrets." "Secrets?" Oliver asked. The fox grinned. "Oh yes. But beware, there are challenges ahead. Follow me." The fox led Oliver to a shimmering river. "To cross this, you must solve a riddle," the fox said. A glowing fish leapt out of the water and spoke in a musical voice. "I have cities but no houses, I have mountains but no trees. I have water but no fish. What am I?" Oliver thought hard. He loved riddles, and after a moment, he smiled. "A map." The river parted, revealing a glittering bridge. "Clever boy," the fox said, leading him onward. Next, they reached a towering castle made of glass. Its doors were locked, and a giant owl sat perched above them. "To enter, you must find the key hidden in the maze behind the castle," the owl hooted. Oliver entered the maze, which seemed endless. The hedges whispered secrets, trying to confuse him. "Turn left," one bush said. "No, right," said another. But Oliver trusted his instincts. He remembered stories where heroes stayed calm and listened to their hearts. After what felt like hours, he found the golden key hidden beneath a glowing rose. He ran back to the castle and unlocked the doors. Inside was a grand hall filled with floating books. Each one glowed with a magical aura. At the center of the hall stood a tall, shadowy figure. Its voice echoed like thunder. To take the greatest treasure, you must face your greatest fear. Oliver's heart pounded. His greatest fear was being alone in the dark. Suddenly, the room turned pitch black. He couldn't see or hear anything. "Stay calm," Oliver whispered to himself. "This is just a test." He closed his eyes and imagined a warm, bright light. Slowly, the darkness faded, and the shadowy figure transformed into Mrs. Ivy. "Very good, Oliver," she said with a proud smile. "You've proven yourself brave, clever, and kind. Now, the treasure is yours." She handed him a glowing book. When Oliver opened it, he saw his name written inside. The pages showed his favorite memories, his dreams, and all the adventures he'd ever imagined. "This book will grow with you," Mrs. Ivy said. "Every time you dream, it will add a new story. Keep it safe." With a flash, Oliver was back in the bookstore. The red book lay in his hands, but it no longer glowed. "Thank you," he said to Mrs. Ivy, who smiled and said, "Remember, Oliver, the greatest magic is already within you." From that day on, Oliver visited the bookstore often. He told Mrs. Ivy about his dreams, and she always listened with a knowing smile. And every night, before bed, Oliver opened the glowing book and added a new story, his own magical adventures. Moral of the story: the real magic lies in courage, imagination, and the stories we create in our hearts.